you did Louisville, Michigan yesterday, Michigan State, and I believe that's the first time you've ever worked in the second week. So congratulations on that. You did a great job. I start off with a question I keep asking all of our college basketball guests. Why does Izzo always have his team so prepared to play in the postseason?
Well, thanks for your compliment there on the regionals. I appreciate that. And number two, the answer, Izzo, I think one of the things about Izzo, and a lot of coaches don't show it on the sidelines, but my understanding of Izzo is that he doesn't push the panic button. He's consistent. So, if you go back into mid-February, this team not only was questioning how good they were, but there was a question mark as to whether they'd really make the NCAA tournament or not. He doesn't seem to push the panic button. He relies on the fundamentals of the game, and the fundamentals of basketball are relatively simple. If you defend and you rebound to start, other good things will happen for you. So I think ultimately he gets his kids thinking that they'll be able to win. He keeps them confident, doesn't push the panic button. And I've had the pleasure of getting to know Izzo a little bit over the last 10 years or so. And he's just the type of guy who takes the time to come by and talk to you, to take the time to help you as an announcer and go out of his way. And I think that type of personality translates very well with young kids, and especially the kids nowadays who are, quote-unquote, maybe the AAU guys who, are hard to get the focus on the team. But I think Izzo, I think it goes back to just the fact of what his demeanor is like as a person.
Now, not to pick on Jay Wright, but he's just in the top of my head as a coach that maybe recently has underachieved in the NCAA tournament. Can a Villanova look at Michigan State and look at Izzo and learn something from it, or is that just something that's part of a guy or a coach's DNA that maybe can't translate?
No, I think, Don, they can translate that, and I think coaches who are really serious about their craft will try to learn as much as they possibly can. It's a tight fraternity. I think these guys talk all the time about what's going on, and I think they pick up things. And I'll give you a real good example of that. We had in the first weekend, we had SMU, and you all know the name Larry Brown, who's been around the block a long time, whether it's be coaching in college or pro or not. Mm-hmm. And the couple of years that Larry Brown was not coaching, I'm going back, about 3 years ago, I guess it is now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago when he wasn't coaching, you wouldn't expect this from Larry Brown, but what he told us was he went to a handful of different coaches and went to their practices to pick their brain, to learn different things, to just stay up on what's going on in basketball. Now, Larry Brown's got a pretty good reputation in terms of a coach. Now, you can say what you want about Larry Brown and moving around from program to program, but I think Larry Brown knows the world of basketball fairly well. Now, here's a guy at the age of 70-plus who was kind of going around from coach to coach, picking their brains to just stay current, stay up on and learn about the game of basketball. So I think, yes, you can watch different styles. I think coaches, you use Villanova versus Michigan State. Yeah, I really believe that you can watch tape and you can watch what makes them fundamentally good, and I think you can pick up on it very, very easily, and I think these guys are willing to share with one another, especially if they're not in the same leagues.
Jim, of the teams remaining that are in Kentucky, of Wisconsin, who they're going to play in the semis, and then of Michigan State and Duke, who do you think of those three as the best chance to beat Kentucky?
I think everybody's been leaning towards Wisconsin, Ryan, over the last 6 weeks, and probably they're my edge right now. I think one of the things you have to keep in mind is that, West Virginia, everybody thought West Virginia might give Kentucky a run in the previous game to the game they played versus Notre Dame was their last, but previous to that. And, because Bobby Huggins is now going with a 13-man lineup, basically, that comes up and presses, and what did Kentucky do with that? I didn't watch that game 100%, but they dismantle that and they win by almost 40 points. I think one of the key things that people will be looking at is the Notre Dame tape against Kentucky, which I did watch that game a lot. And I thought one of the things, even though Notre Dame did not shoot the ball particularly well in comparison to how they generally do from the three-point line, what they did do was they spread the court and they opened up the middle of the floor. Now, you'll say, well, why is that so important? Well, A, you have to be able to at least pretend that you're going to knock back shots and have the reputation that you can knock back the outside shot. But what Kentucky does very, very well is that if you're driving or trying to post them up, it's not necessarily the first guy who's going to block the shot, but it's the second guy who's going to block the shot. So what you'll see is you can see a guy like Willie Cauley-Stein be out 15 feet from the basket, and if you telegraph your drive to the basket from 15 feet on the other side and it's a slow drive, he has time to get there. So by really moving them out on the floor, you want to drive the bigs one-on-one rather than one-on-two or one-on-1.5 where the guy can come and cheat, because that's where they get a lot of their blocks. And I thought Cincinnati did a pretty good job of that. I had that game. They kind of played roughhouse basketball the way, aggressive basketball, perfectly legal, roughed them up a little bit, but where they got in trouble was when they were shooting the ball inside. If you don't go quickly on Kentucky, they are going to not only block your shot, but they're going to embarrass you how long they are. Because I will tell you this, I've been around basketball a long time, and I'm fortunate to be around the pro game, as you know, and the college game. And from a college perspective, when I had Kentucky the first weekend and we sit through those practices, when they walked on the floor, I have to tell you, I was shocked at how tall those guys were.
I know. Let me hit you with a question that everybody seems, there's nobody gray on this. It's black or white. You saw Kentucky that first weekend. Could they beat the Knicks? Could they beat a bad NBA team?
No, you know what, Michael? That's a good question, and I think it's gone around with one thing that people don't realize, and even though Kentucky is very talented from top to bottom collegiately, what people don't realize in the NBA is that you have guys on, let's call it just a 12-man roster just to keep it simple. The 12 guys on the team are generally, the 12th guy would be probably the best guy on any collegiate team right now. I know these kids come into the draft, and that's why you don't see all of these kids, the kids who are the terrific players coming out of high school and college, the first-year guys. That's why it's not 100% guaranteed that these kids will come in and dominate in the NBA, because people just don't realize the level of talent that's on an NBA roster. It's kind of like, people see in baseball, you guys are very familiar with baseball. Oh, you know what? That guy throws an 85-mile-an-hour slider. I could hit that ball. Well, yeah, try to hit it. And then when he throws the gas at you, try to hit the slider right after the gas. So people don't realize just how good the pros are. I mean, when I was playing pro basketball years and years ago, I was just, shocked at the level of talent. Because remember, all of these guys were the best players on their college teams, basically, that are making the pros. And the other thing I would add to it is that, in a sense, and I know it's not totally true, the college players are playing for the luxury of the game. Now, I know a lot of them have their sights on going to the NBA, and that's all part of it, and I get that. But they're playing for the fun and the luxury. It's a luxury almost to be playing college basketball. The guys who are playing in the NBA are playing for their livelihoods and their necessity. And any time you put up two players who are equally talented, and one's playing for necessity and one's playing for luxury, I'm always taking the guy who's playing out of necessity, who's playing for his livelihood. So the answer in a long-winded fashion is no. I don't think they'd have real. They might sneak one game out of 30 against a low-quality NBA team, but I don't even know about that.
Well, then what was going through Larry Brown's head when he said that they would be a playoff team in the Eastern Conference?
Who would be, Kentucky?
Yeah, Larry Brown said that last week.
Well, not to argue and disagree with Larry Brown, but I don't buy it.